At exactly 9 a.m., my access card stopped working. I stood there in the glass lobby, coffee still warm in my hand, watching the red light blink where green had always appeared before. People streamed past me, junior analysts, assistants, executives who had nodded at me for years, now suddenly avoiding eye contact like I was already erased. I tried again. Red light. A security guard glanced over, then looked down at his tablet. "Can I help you?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "I work here," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "There must be a mistake." He tapped his screen once more, then shook his head. "You've been deactivated. HR asked that you come upstairs with me." That was how it happened. No warning, no conversation, no explanation, just silence where my career used to be. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a windowless conference room with beige walls and a fake plant in the corner. Across the tables sat two people I had trusted, my department head and an HR director I'd shared birthday cake with just months earlier. They didn't look uncomfortable. They looked prepared. "This is purely a performance-based decision," HR said, sliding a folder toward me. "We're restructuring." I almost laughed. Performance. I had personally led 3 of the firm's most profitable cross-border deals in the last 18 months. I had trained half the people now, restructuring me out. But the words didn't matter. The decision had already been made long before 9 a.m. "You'll receive severance," my department head added quickly, not meeting my eyes. "If you sign today." I didn't touch the folder. "What about the Meridian acquisition?" I asked instead. "The one scheduled to close this quarter." A flicker passed between them, quick, nervous, almost invisible. "That's no longer your concern," HR said. "Your access has already been revoked." That was the moment I knew this wasn't about performance. Because Meridian wasn't just any acquisition. It was the largest transaction the firm had attempted in its history. A multi-layered deal involving offshore holdings, shell corporations, and a valuation that, on paper, looked impressive but didn't quite add up. I had noticed that months ago. Quiet inconsistencies. Numbers that balanced only if you didn't look too closely. Structures that relied on assumptions no regulator would accept if they were examined properly. And I had asked questions. Polite questions. Professional questions. The kind you ask when you believe you're protecting the company. Apparently, that was my mistake. Am I being terminated for raising compliance concerns? I asked calmly. HR's smile tightened. Absolutely not. My department head stood up. "Security will escort you to collect your things." I was given exactly 8 minutes to pack my desk. 8 minutes to dismantle 7 years of my life. Colleagues pretended to work while I placed framed photos, notebooks, and a single plant into a cardboard box. No one spoke. No one asked. Fear is contagious in offices like this. Everyone understands the unspoken rule. If it can happen to you, it can happen to me. At 9:42 a.m., I was outside the building. No badge, no access, no job. By 10:15 a.m., my company email was gone. By 10:30, my calendar invites disappeared. By 11 o'clock, my name was removed from internal documentation I had written myself. They thought that was the end of it. They didn't know that 3 months earlier, when the Meridian numbers first stopped making sense, I had quietly copied everything. Every email, every revision, every version of every financial model. Not because I planned revenge, because experience had taught me something important. When powerful people move fast, it's usually to hide something. I went home instead of spiraling. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table. I opened my laptop, and I started connecting dots. By noon, I wasn't just unemployed. I was holding proof that the deal my firm was about to announce, the deal everyone was counting on to save the quarter, was built on a structure that would collapse under even minimal regulatory scrutiny. Inflated valuations, hidden liabilities, a shell company that shouldn't legally exist in the jurisdiction it was operating from. If this deal closed, it wouldn't just be fraud. It would be catastrophic. And the number attached to it once everything was exposed wouldn't be in millions. It would be in billions. By early afternoon, my phone started vibrating. Unknown numbers. Missed calls. Voicemails left but immediately deleted. By 4 p.m., a former colleague texted me just 3 words. "Are you watching the news?" I turned on the television. And that's when I realized getting fired at 9 a.m. wasn't the worst thing that was going to happen that day. By 4:37 p.m., the first headline hit. It wasn't dramatic. Not yet. Just a quiet financial alert buried beneath market updates and celebrity news. Regulators request additional documentation on pending Meridian acquisition. Most people would have scrolled past it. Inside the firm, though, panic had already started. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. The CFO. I let it ring. 5 minutes later, a text appeared. "We need to talk. Urgent." I didn't reply, because at that exact moment, something far more important was happening. The compliance package I had sent anonymously, methodically, with timestamps and cross-references, had reached the right desks. Not internal compliance. External. Federal. International. People assume explosions are loud. In corporate reality, they're silent. They happen behind closed doors, in emergency calls, in boardrooms where voices drop instead of rise. At 6:02 p.m., trading on 3 linked entities was temporarily halted. At 6:18 p.m., the firm's legal counsel cancelled all remaining meetings for the day. At 6:41 p.m., the Meridian deal, once celebrated as the future of the company, was officially paused pending investigation. That was when the real calls started. My former department head left a voicemail. His voice shook. "There's been a misunderstanding. We may have acted too quickly this morning. HR emailed from a personal account, not the company one. Please confirm receipt. We'd like to discuss a revised separation." By 7 p.m., the tone had changed completely. No more authority. No more distance. Just fear. What they didn't realize, what they couldn't possibly realize, was that Meridian was only the surface. Once regulators began pulling on that thread, everything unraveled. The inflated asset values were tied to previous quarters. The shell entities touched older transactions. The risk exposure wasn't isolated. It was systemic. By Nightfall, the estimated exposure wasn't $700 million. It was $7 billion. At 8:23 p.m., the CEO went on an emergency call with investors. At 8:47 p.m., the firm's stock dropped sharply in after-hours trading. At 9:11 p.m., a senior partner resigned. That was when my doorbell rang. I didn't open it immediately. I looked through the peephole first. 2 people stood outside. The same people who had sat across from me in that beige conference room that morning. The HR director. My department head. No security now. No confidence. Just desperation. "We just want to talk," he said through the door. Off the record. I opened it. They didn't step inside. They didn't need to. The truth was already between us, heavy and unavoidable. "You destroyed us," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, I documented you." HR swallowed hard. "There's an opportunity here. If you're willing to clarify certain interpretations publicly." There it was. The real ask. I smiled for the first time all day. "You fired me at 9 a.m., I said calmly. "You erased my access. You boxed my desk. You decided I was expendable. Neither of them spoke. You don't get to rewrite that now. By midnight, the story was everywhere. Financial networks, international outlets, analysts tearing apart a deal that had been praised just days earlier. Words like systemic failure, regulatory breach, misrepresentation dominated the coverage. By morning, investigations were formal. Subpoenas followed. Executives lawyered up. And the firm that had walked me out with a cardboard box stood on the edge of collapse. I slept better that night than I had in months. Not because I'd won, but because I'd told the truth, and it had finally become louder than their power. 3 weeks later, I received an official letter, not from the company, from regulators, thanking me, acknowledging my cooperation, informing me that my documentation had been instrumental. 6 months later, the firm no longer existed in its original form. Assets were sold, leadership removed. The name quietly disappeared from financial rankings. As for me, I didn't go back. I didn't need to. Because the day they locked me out at 9 a.m., they thought they were ending my story. By nightfall, the only story left was theirs, and it cost them $7 billion.